Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek For. This time, Firstborn. Yeah, TNG, Firstborn. Hey, become a Patreon member. We're not going to ask you for your Firstborn. It's very affordable. It's easy to do. You just support us. You get the bonus stuff. You get to see video of us and more content than you get on the regular feed. And you get the stuff from the Mothership. It's all been on Radio Hour. So, patreon.com/IEBD. And on with Firstborn on It's All Been Trek Before.
Come out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are going to talk the Next Generation episode, Firstborn, which is, if we're counting down to the end of Next Generation, I think this is 5 from the last. If we're counting down from the last 5, this is 5. We have 4 episodes after this. First impressions of the 5th final episode of the Next Generation of all time.
I enjoyed it quite a lot. I mean, I'm not sure that's an impression or not. I mean, well, you know, I expect to. All right, actually, it does sort of work because just the cold open with Worf rehearsing what he was going to say to Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
There's something so much more polished you can see from the beginning of the series until now with Worf and his character and what they're allowing him to do. And I'm glad that's kind of. I would say that's probably the success story, in my opinion, out of this last season is what they've managed to do with him and give him the room to show that range. And then obviously he's going to be, they're not done with the character, so they're just launching him.
I would argue he gets much better development in Deep Space Nine, but I would totally agree with you that this final season sets up the Deep Space Nine development.
Mm.
If that's what you were, I guess I said I totally agree with you. You didn't assert that point, but I'm guessing that you're.
Well, yeah, that's where I was moving toward.
Yeah.
My initial reaction was my usual, oh great, Klingon warrior nonsense, blah blah blah. But but for the long time listeners, they know I've kind of softened on that. And yeah, I thought it ended up being an interesting episode. And they mentioned DS9 several times. Quark comes in, great crossover, a great scene.
One appearance in the Next Generation.
Yeah. We'll get to it. I'm not sure I love the twist, but we'll get into that later. The Duras sisters are in there, which I do enjoy. So, and I thought there's kind of their insertion, if you will, could have been lame or cliche, but it was also fun and added to the interesting twist. Not that twist, but some interesting stuff. So, yeah, actually, I took a ton of notes, even though it's not probably a lot of material, but we'll get into it. But so. It exceeded my expectations. Didn't do what Keith's background is for the probably, but still, I did end up enjoying it.
I feel like that's the measure you now judge every episode by, but it's such a rare episode that actually hangs the moon.
This is true.
Right?
Yeah,
like most episodes are never going to live up to that standard.
You don't hang the moon every day. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a high standard.
It is.
My first impression, this is like I said, I've never seen this episode. As you all know by now, wow. I read about.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen any of the last episodes we have left. I don't think I've seen any of these 5. As you know, I read about episodes. The twist and everything did not make enough impression on me. And I guess that's a little bit of spoiler that it never gets followed up upon in DS9 or Picard or anything that were this strange time travel story. I guess after the twist happened, I vaguely remembered it, but I kept expecting a totally different twist.
Mm-hmm.
It surprised me. First of all, it surprised me when he said he was future Alexander. It surprised me more that was not undone in the last few minutes of the episode. And that was legit the twist.
I kept waiting for it to be undone as well.
Another shoe to drop. Yeah, we'll talk about that as we get to it. And I had a theory on who he was, and it was not future Alexander. So this is not, I'm pretty sure this is Alexander's last Next Gen episode, but it's not the last time we'll see the character. It might be the last time we see the character played by young Brian Bonsall, because they're going to do Klingons age really quickly, so they're going to cast a much older actor for the next time we see Alexander in DS9. But we will see him again. So that's good. I think part of it was with the Lursen Bietor stuff was, slight spoiler, they're in the first film, and I think this was mostly in there to remind us, because they're 2 of the 3 main antagonists of the first film, and I think it almost felt like they were wedged into this episode to remind us who they were. So when this film came out, only like 7-8 months later, we remembered, hey, these sisters are terrible, and we should worry about them.
I forgot that there was
getting a whole film as the villains.
I've been trying not to think too much that, oh, these are the last few episodes.
Yeah.
Just to not get my mind in the sense of like, oh, they're just wrapping things up. I know we felt that way about a good bit of this season, but I tried to stay out of that. But
and it's also family focused, which I don't mind as a rule. But considering how little family they focused on for the first 6 years, it sucks that they waited this long to explore all the family dynamics. Whereas I feel like if they'd peppered them over 7 years, it would make more sense. There were some family things in the earlier seasons, but not like this season. So I liked this episode, but I agree it did not hang the moon. It's not one of my favorites. It's not even, I think it's going to rank middling for the season, but we'll see when we get to that point. Let's jump into the episode. We get an opening where, as I think Keith had mentioned, Worf is rehearsing for a talk with his son. But my first note wasn't Worf rehearsing, as great as that was. It's, oh, Alexander doesn't want to be a warrior. Which, yeah, no, I get that. But for Worf, who has spent his whole arc of the series trying to fit in and trying to get in touch with his warrior past because he wasn't growing up with it, I think for me, that whole scene encapsulates that Worf would have really liked the upbringing as a warrior and is sad that he didn't get it. And so he doesn't understand why his son wouldn't want it because he wants it so bad. It's like you want for your kids what you didn't get. And yet at the same time, clearly Alexander is a very different character. And I can't help but seeing parallels with myself and my father of my dad wanting to be like masculine, even though he got the masculine upbringing, wanting to continue the masculine upbringing. And I'm so an Alexander. I don't want anything to do with the masculinity.
Yeah, I'll equate it to like a sports kind of thing where, you know, definitely plenty of dads. And if I had kids, I know I'd have been that dad. Like, well, I was okay at it and I enjoyed it. So you should enjoy it. But, You know, because I know, I mean, and my dad was not a jerk about it at all, but he was definitely into it, you know, and he, especially baseball was the one where he'd come to the games and, get a level swing in there or whatever. And my dad, he got a lot of he lettered in several different sports or whatever and everything, but actually got a look from the MLB scouts. And then he said he was hitting like 420 his senior year. And then the scout came to watch him play. And then he hit like 100 the rest of the year. He just went right in the tank. But anyway, I'm with Alexander. I'm just like, I was like, is he going to ask this? And he does. He's like, what if I don't want to do it? And then he follows up with, well, I don't care about that. I'm like, yes, Alexander, my friend.
I don't know. Just something. It bothered me at the time. I think just because the petulance with which it was delivered just seemed so.
Yeah, we'll get into our annoyingness scale and all that.
well, it just seems like you just want to go. You don't. I don't know. Too rash. He's a little kid, obviously, but I mean, it's like you want him to understand that he's a little kid. Maybe just think for a second and just. I don't know.
Keep in mind, he's like 5. Klingons age really fast.
Right.
My annoyance is Alexander too, but old Alexander.
Well,
I'm jumping ahead too. But.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I mean, I was a little bit sad that when Wesley left the show after season 4 or early season 5, maybe halfway through season 5, I can't remember exactly when Wesley left the show, but I did wonder about what would the show have been like had they immediately brought in Alexander as a regular presence to replace him. Like, let's double down on having a kid on board and go younger. And that would have been a very different show. But I think, even though it would have read as corny, and I'm not saying Brian Bransall was the right actor to handle it, I think I might have wanted it in some way. I kind of miss having some kid perspective on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably would have complained about it the whole 3 seasons, but now at this point at the end, I'm like, I kind of wish we'd had it. Worf was not happy, obviously, about Alexander, and the fact that he took it to work. He brought his personal life to work, which I guess when you live at work, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
But I do appreciate the growth of the character that he can find in Picard. And I think that really sets up their nice relationship later. Because I'm not sure I mean, we got a little bit of Picard-Worf bonding in those other Klingon episodes where Worf had to, like, defend his house and defend his father and all that. But knowing we're going to get some more Worf and Picard development in the films, I'm glad we had this, and I like him confiding in Picard. I appreciated that. And that he didn't like beat around the bush like he would have in the early seasons. He just came out and said, this is what's going on. And then Picard gave good advice about it. Like, it was a good mutual relationship that I really liked.
I the other thing about that scene is they talk about the delay because of the nebula, I think, or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, that means we can do this and this and this and this. And I was like, oh, that delay is great because it creates all these other plot lines for us. It facilitates all the plot lines for this episode, including what we talked about in the green room, the disappearance of Picard from the rest of the episode. You know, he's going to go look at those ruins.
Which is not really where he was. As Stephen and I discussed, I'm sure this is news to Keith. The reason Patrick Stewart was only in that one scene in this episode is because this was the week while they were filming this where he hosted Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
So I told Stephen I was really disappointed. I already had picked my bonus episode for between seasons because we're going to read the book that I gave you copies of. But I think at this point I would pick, let's watch the Patrick Stewart hosted Saturday Night Live. Well, for you too, but you don't have to. That totally would have been my pick had I not already picked one.
I think, going back to Wesley, I think final mission in season 4 was his not his final going away. There's that, and then there's First Duty, and then whenever we just saw him, Journey's End. I don't know, have we done that one?
Journey's End was his. Yeah, that was his last. That was where he went with the Traveler.
Yeah.
But his last episode is the main character's final mission, which was season 4, episode 9. So he did slightly less than half the series.
Yeah.
So if Alexander had come in season 4, episode 10, that would have been, or even a little bit later in season 4. If Alexander does as many episodes as Wesley, that would have been interesting to me. But so they beam down. Worf and Alexander are snacking on some like live worms or something, and Alexander is happily snacking. Although
he's right in there, yeah.
Child actor trying to act in that moment, but I liked the little bit of Worf offering Geordi one, and Geordi's just like, nah.
Yeah, that was a nice bit.
Also liked the bit of the Federation, the Starfleet officers that were spectators, the no-name officers we don't know, getting super enthusiastic about the recreation.
Yeah, so my response initially was, this is the worst Renaissance Festival / Trek convention ever. But the Fashionate So people from my favorite TNG Tumblr, Fashionate So, they said that they appreciated that the Starfleet people were there in their uniforms because they were like, you could appreciate another culture without appropriating another culture. And I thought that was a nice little touch.
True. Worf was the audience member that volunteered to go on stage, but it was all a ploy so that he could get his son on stage.
Yeah.
Did it seem to you like the performer was very surprised that Alexander fought as hard as he did and was kind of thrown off?
Yeah, I couldn't tell. Yeah, I get. Well, you know, W.C. Fields never act with kids or animals, so
right.
I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm used to messing around with regular people.
Regular people, because kids aren't regular people.
Exactly.
Well, they're not.
They're small somethings.
Yes.
I did enjoy up until that actually this happened a couple of different times, I think, in this episode, where they're speaking Klingon, but there's no subtitles and no one's doing the R2D2 thing of like, oh, what's that R2? But until Crusher loudly yells, what's he saying? I think that's the only line in the whole episode. I think that's it.
I think you're right.
And she couldn't, maybe she was hosting Mad TV that week.
God, can you imagine? I would, if she had, watching those 2 episodes back to back, P. Stew on SNL and G. McFadden on Mad TV. Oh my God, what a bonus episode that would be for us.
That would have been great.
Coup. So there was a creeper present as well, spying on Worf, played by James Sloyan. The character was named Himtar, according to this episode. James Sloyan, who's best known for The Sting. We've talked about him before, as well as Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager.
Great
he previously played Admiral Jirok years ago on Next Gen. And he has 2 episodes of Voyager, 2 episodes of DS9. One we already saw as Dr. Mora that worked with Odo when he was a slime baby. And he'll reprise that in a 2nd episode of DS9 in a few years. And then he's got an episode of Voyager. So Yeah, he's a character actor who, of his 95 credits, his 3 Star Trek appearances are, well, 3 Star Trek characters over 4 characters over 3 series.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are what he's best known for.
And as I was listening, I'm like, I think that's. I looked at him like it's James Sloan. I'm like, and I was like, I think that's who I think it is, and it was because his voice was very distinctive. The makeup was great.
Yeah.
And I try not to do that because I end up doing it with every Pixar or whatever movie. Like, oh, which celebrity is this? In this case, I knew it was a celebrity, but I was like, I recognize that voice. So.
Yeah, he's definitely familiar looking. And his character's cover story was totally viable to me that he's a family friend we hadn't met, but he was sent by Kern, who wasn't in this episode, but was name dropped a whole bunch of times. Worf's brother, Kern, that we saw played by Tony Todd. And he had the ring. So legit, like, tie. I actually bought that. And his whole excuse of Alexander is the heir to this house because Kern is temporarily running the house because Worf isn't part of the Klingon Empire. So, but Kern doesn't have any heirs, and Worf does. It makes sense that the house would have a vested interest, especially if they just got back in good grace in society, and making sure that the next in line was ready for it.
Yeah.
So sending him, I suspected from the beginning he was there more to train him than protect him, to make sure he was ready than protect him, and that is part of the story. But yeah, that all gelled for me. I was buying that.
I agree because it sounded like classic Klingon nonsense. I mean, it made sense. I also think House of Moog would be a great bar, or a great bar name.
I mean, House of Moog would be a great spinoff, and yes, it could be set in a bar that was run by the House of Moog, but but I want to see the type of customers that come in. I want to see Worf as forced to be a bartender. I mean, that wasn't my alternate episode, but as soon as you said that, I'm in on it.
It wasn't mine either, but and everybody there knows your name, and because all Klingons
because they're suspicious, and they're going to make sure they know who you are. Unless you have a family ring, and then they're not going to investigate you. But other than that, they're going to know who you are. They mentioned the Duras sisters early on were behind the attack, and I kind of appreciated the tie-in that Riker was like, yeah, weren't they on DS9? They're like, that was months ago, which first of all, it was over a year ago, canon-wise, because it was early season 1 and this was late season 2. But
technically that's months, and then we need time dilation and anyway.
I did not quite buy that they hadn't been seen in over a year, and DS9 was their last appearance, and Riker was like, well, I just heard they were there. Like, that doesn't quite line up. That felt forced. But I was also kind of glad they mentioned their DS9 appearance. So
I was actually able to be like, okay, yep, I remember that specifically. So I did appreciate that.
It was a wasted episode for them on DS9, but they were there.
Yeah.
Then the Kim Tuck, or whatever his name is. Kim Tar. As he talks to Alexander about the Klingon philosophy, he couches the violence and the combativeness and the warriorship in terms of protecting the family, which felt a little bit like retconning Klingon honor until you get to the twist at the end, and then you're like, oh, that's totally understandable why he couched it that way.
I was amazed. I don't think they actually said honorable or dishonorable in this episode, which I appreciated that. And maybe it's because it was Alexander. I wrote, yes, strange uncle, please walk in and say goodnight to my son. And then he's saying all that violent stuff, and I wrote sweet dreams, and then he goes, dream well, young Alexander. I'm like, what? Oh, it's so nice your mother's here. It's like, hey, weird uncle, I don't know where you're going with this.
Alexander needs a dream catcher.
Trouble sleeping, and now it's really bad.
I did like the picture of Kalar on his nightstand.
Yeah, I did.
It's a nice set dressing touch.
This weirdo referencing it, I don't know how I felt, but I did like it being there. He also mentions lake on the Klingon homeworld that it's so clear you can see to the bottom. And in my mind, and this is just my anti-Klingon bias probably, I didn't see the Klingons as environmentalists. I feel like they would just be like, those smokestacks would be going full blast. And you know what? If you don't like it, deal with it. You're a Klingon. You're tough. Handle all this pollution. But apparently I'm wrong. I'm wrong because they have a lake that you can see to the bottom. or it's a very shallow lake. I'm not sure which.
I assumed all their lakes were of lava, but
Clear lava, though.
clear lava. I mean, yeah. We then get a scene with Quark from Deep Space Nine, Armin Shimmerman. Not Armin Shimmerman's first time on Next Generation, but his first and only time as Quark on Next Generation. I was kind of taken out of that scene by the Starfleet security officer that just kind of hovered behind him the whole time.
I didn't understand that.
Like, I assume. So my headcanon is that they called the station, they got in touch with Sisko or Kira, and they asked for Quark, so they went and got him. And the security officer behind him was just the junior grunt they set down to get him on the phone.
Keep an eye on him.
Makes sense, but why did they stay and hover?
Right.
Like, it's not like you need to monitor Riker's call with. Well, I guess it's Riker. If it was Picard, you don't need to monitor. It's Riker. It could be starting some trouble. So
I just assumed it was more for monitoring Quark to make sure he didn't do anything with the equipment or who knows what else. I mean,
well, I'm sure Quark was like, well, you can leave. It'll be fine. No, I'll stay. No, you really don't want to be here. It's good. I know how to dial this. I've done it many times before. Oh, that's okay. I'm fine staying, helping out. It's good. I like
the whole thing with store credit and the vouchers was cracking me up.
Yeah.
It's such a Quark move.
Yeah, and Jonathan Frakes, Riker, is having so much fun with it, too. It's so fun.
Doesn't it just make you sad that Riker did not have more interaction with Quark in the franchise? Because I feel like those two characters would have really clashed well.
And I know it's just coincidence, that Patrick Stewart isn't around and obviously Picard isn't around, but it feels like more than ever Riker is Kirk in this episode. And of course I love that. The later the gambit that comes up later, we'll get to. But yeah, it was so much fun. It
also makes you wonder how the show would have gone if Patrick Stewart departed after Best of Both Worlds, like was rumored would happen.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. Like, I'm not saying I wish Patrick Stewart wasn't in these final episodes. It's not that at all. Yeah. I just love Riker. And I wish we'd gotten the Riker spinoff rather than just in books. I wish we would have gotten on screen. And just to have him interact with Quark periodically would have been wonderful.
I think you're reminding me of what it is that I really enjoyed about this episode overall. And I remember thinking, through the course of this, I'll probably talk you into liking it more or something. But you're actually doing it yourself, because you were starting to talk me out of it. I was like, what was going on? And it was like, yeah, there's really just Riker's whole thread through that, and even the interactions with Alexander, young and old. Well, actually just old, right? Because whoever he was saying he was at the point, just the detective work and so forth. I enjoyed that. Even if you could pick it apart, like that couldn't have blah blah blah. It just kind of the way he went about it was fun.
Mm-hmm. To that point, I'd say, I feel like a season 2 or 3 seasons ago, whatever, a Klingon episode would have just gone in circles with honor and all that kind of stuff. Instead, we had so many other elements thrown in here that I thought it just fleshed it out so much more, made it just more interesting that all that stuff was going on. I don't know if this is sexist or not, but it was definitely, I enjoyed it as a reference to the Duras sisters, where Quark says they're big talk, and he gives the hand gestures of a woman with large breasts, and then he brings his thumb and his forefinger together on both hands and says, "Small tips." I just thought that was really smart.
I didn't
catch that. I did not catch that.
A little extra sexual innuendo.
Wow.
So we know once more who's the pervert of the podcast.
Well, exactly. This is perv corner for sure. And when I think of the Duras sisters, I think of what our friends
the boob windows.
Called the boob window,
yeah. Wow.
So I was thinking of that, and so when he went there, I just thought, that's really good.
I'm not disagreeing. I just didn't pick up on it. That's
that's
the whole scene between Riker and Quark. I love that Kimtar was like, that's what gave him respect for Riker, because I could. Even without the twist, I could see that being the scene where any Klingon with the least bit of honor would be like, okay, Riker, I'm not going to mess with you. I got your measure. Kimtar's tough love doesn't work on Alexander, but I never expected it to. So, but in retrospect, again, after the twist, I get why he did it. I get the approach. I do think it was pretty well written, which means it's a good time to bring up that it was teleplay by Renea Travaria, one of the regular producer people, but story by Mark Kalbfeld, who is best known for being a director on this one episode of a writer on this one episode of Next Generation, a producer on the Brad Paisley Welcome to the Future in 2009, as well as the Will and Grace musical, and a director on Justin Bieber That Should Be Me. So he's a producer and director for, well, he's only got the one directing credit. He's mainly a producer for musical and music acts. Billboard Music Awards, CMA Awards, Miley's New Year's Eve party in 2021. He produces all this stuff.
Interesting.
So I wonder, the fact that he held back and did not like put the DJ scene in here, we should give him props for that. They beam down to where Lursa and Vietor war, and they find an alien. I'm guessing from IMDb that is Yogg, or is it somebody else?
Gorta is the one guy.
Gorta's the guy they beam down and find? Okay, that's played by Colin Mitchell. He doesn't even have an IMDb picture. He only has 10 credits.
Gorta's the guy. I really liked his makeup. I thought he was an interesting character, and then we're never going to see him again. And I liked his clothes. I liked his he had his skin and makeup and everything. I thought it was really great.
Yeah. I guess the other guy that I mentioned then must probably have been one of the Klingon assassins or something. But
then he gets a funny line at the end when Data's like, "Gather your belongings. It's time to leave," and he's holding that mug and he just kind of throws it back. He's like,
throws it.
They took everything. So he's literally just been sitting there waiting on somebody else.
It was a really funny scene. It felt unnecessary to the plot, but I'm glad they took the moment to give it to us. That alien played it perfectly. I will say I bumped really hard on the fact they're like, yeah, they're selling it to a Uridian, and I'm like, Uridians again? How many times are they going to reuse that same mask?
Yeah.
And then the next 10 minutes, I was just waiting to see the mask, originally worn by James Cromwell, if you remember, last year. Yep. But it's been worn by like 4 actors at this point, and sure enough, the mask shows up, and I'm like, did they only make the one Uridian mask, and they keep bringing Uridians back so they don't have to build a new mask?
That was Yogg, right? Yogg was the one in that mask, I think. But I had the same reaction. I'm like, I think we've seen this guy before.
Not the actor, but that mask has been used over and over again. They just repaint it slightly every time.
Yeah.
They built one Uridian mask. For some reason, these 2 years of Star Trek have lots of Uridian stuff. I don't think we ever hear of the Uridians before that, and I don't think we ever hear or see them again after this. I could be wrong. Maybe they're in DS9 for the next few seasons, but I feel like the Uridians just have this 2-year bit of Star Trek where we see them and then they're gone. I did not even remember Uridian was a race on Star Trek.
Before that, I think is when Kimtar says to Alexander, "You're more human than Klingon." And I didn't think of Wrath of Khan. I thought of Rob Zombie, more human than Klingon, rather than more human than human. But much as some people have said when Kirk calls Spock most human, or never been any more human.
Yeah,
is that an insult? This definitely sounds like an insult.
Yes,
more human than. It also led me to, and that this gets even stranger with the twist at the end. But so I started thinking about, because, well, no, was Kalar half human, half Klingon?
Right. So Alexander's 1/4 human.
Okay, so I was just getting into the thing of the genetics and I
think they meant in personality-wise, because she raised him more in the human tradition than the Klingon tradition. Till he was 3, and now he's 5. But remember, they age really fast, because even though he's 5, he feels like 10.
Okay, yeah, and I was trying to think, what is there a dominant gene? So Vulcans and humans will they always have 20 years, or sometimes they won't? Kind of the same thing. Like if Klingons and humans mated, are they going to have the ridges, or maybe not so much, or whatever? I don't know. And
yeah, he had ridges, but they're less pronounced than most of the Klingons we see, which is what they usually do with half. Like Kalar's ridges are more subtle than most Klingons.
Well, and then when he was talking about him hiding it, then I started going down the Rudolph path of if you had a Klingon, whatever human child, and you thought, because he started talking about what's hard for you, blah blah blah. Would you? I thought Kimtar hinted at it, and makes a lot more sense with the twist. Feeling like he had, you have to hide it, don't you? You feel like you have to hide it, and Rudolph, they're putting, covering his red nose, of course, but I don't know. What do you do? A comb over the ridges? I don't know, but Yeah, so it just led me down that road for a little while. Like, it's not limited to the Klingons, humans, Vulcans. Of course, there's Romulans, and on and on and on, of course. But anyway, that's all I got on that. Yeah, we could go. That's its own thing, but of speculating what it would be like. So that's all I got on that.
So this is about the point of the episode where Kimtar recommended taking Alexander away and sending him to a special Klingon school. And quite honestly, I couldn't remember if that's what happened to Alexander. I kept thinking that he was going to succeed in getting him taken away because I didn't remember the arc. And I know that Alexander is soon going to go live among the Klingons. Sorry, spoiler there, I guess. But I think that kind of happens off screen, which is why I didn't mind spoiling it. But yeah, it felt like, oh, is this how Alexander got to live among the Klingons? Oh, it's not? Okay, that's weird. Then why are they even... Okay, whatever. But yeah. Worf resists, which is a credit to him as a father of really wanting to be there for his son, which we know he had resisted. So I appreciate the conclusion of that story, or the full circle of that story of Worf now likes having Alexander there and wants to be a good dad. I liked that. I did have a problem with Alexander not being allowed to question Klingon history. That Kimtar got really frustrated with him, was like, you just need to learn to interpret it correctly, which to me is, don't question it. These are our sacred legends. And that bothered me because obviously I have a problem with, the sacred legends of today that I was raised in the Catholic Church with.
Well, he's, in a sense, what we're eventually going to learn that he's born again Klingon, so that's tends to happen.
I don't recall that part. Geez, Keith, spoiler. Yeah, obviously. Riker trades the Uridian, all of his cargo, for half a gram of a gel. Yeah. Man, that gel must be really valuable.
Yeah.
What was it called again?
I didn't write that down. I didn't care about what it was called because I don't think we ever hear it again. But
it might have suggest what it's supposed to be for. I guess is why I was curious.
I assumed it was to fix all the wrinkles on his face, but
and half a gram of Anjoran biomimetic gel.
Yeah, the biogenetic whatever was why I thought it was for his face wrinkles.
I mean, it could be like stem cells or something, or it could be
yeah, exactly.
Actually, I think that's what it would be.
The mimetic part makes me think it's to. Oh, that's not mimic though. That's mimetic. I guess it makes him a better mime. I don't. Yeah, I'm not either.
Well, he is a very good mime. That was the deleted scene. I noticed on the DVD of this episode that there were deleted scenes. I didn't watch them. I should have. But I was like, wow, there's deleted scenes. I don't know if there have been deleted scenes for a while on the next gen Blu-rays. I just never paid attention to them, but there were deleted scenes on this episode that I did not watch. And now I really wonder what they were.
Yep, there's no way to find out.
Nope, not before we finish recording this episode. There's not.
I'll mention one of our friends, Jeffrey from MetaTrek. He posted recently on Instagram. Cool thing. It was it's all these things that they used to show in the trailers for the shows. He did kind of a whole those little shots, and I was like, I had forgotten all about those because as he was showing them, I'm like, I do remember either seeing those or seeing stills from those back in the day. So those are really cool. So
the original series included a lot of scenes in their trailers that didn't make it into the episode. Yeah, I remember noticing that when I originally watched the first DVDs. But that's been forever ago at this point.
Yeah.
But we do like MetaTrek, folks, so check them out. I will not cut this from the podcast because we want to give them a good plug. And hopefully Jeffrey will guest star with us again soon.
Spoiler alert, but we will run into Anjoran biomimetic gel in the future.
Yay.
Or at least biomimetic gel. Yeah.
In what context?
I won't tell you when. We will see it down.
You won't? Why not?
No spoilers.
Really?
I just spoiled myself, but I'm forgetting it.
Okay. I'm intrigued because it's usually me saying, "Oh, they're just slight spoilers. I've been given to you anyway," and I don't know where you're going with it.
It could be a bigger spoiler, but we'll get
Okay. I'm curious.
But during that,
something to look forward to finding out. It just sort of happened. We're like, oh, that's the thing.
It's DS9 stuff, so it won't be long.
Yeah, makes sense.
I like Riker's gambit when he's like, "Yeah, fire the phasers. I'm like, what is going on here? And then they start to the ship. I was like, aha! That's where I was like, that's a Kirk. That's a great Kirk move there.
Yeah.
So I really love that. His confidence in it, like, yeah, shoot it, do it.
I mean, it was a wonderful, clever thing to like throw that stuff into space and just. I think they probably gave him the gel because I'm guessing it actually didn't cost Riker all that much to do it, but the wasting it in such a baller move was pretty cool.
So I guess now we're to the twist. Are we to the twist yet? Maybe you guys might have something.
Well, I do have the sisters laughing at the assassination attempt because now we get the Duras sisters. Was fun. I loved their laughing at it. I love them every time they come on screen. I love them in the film too. I can't wait for you to see them on the big screen. I know we're not going to get to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
So they do something in this that they also do in the other episode we watched this for DS9 that I really love is when you've got like the protagonists and typical antagonists coming together with a common purpose to figure out something like this. There's chicanery afoot here. What is going on? And just that reaction they have, that outrage and just like worry and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. We had this whole reveal that Lursa was pregnant.
Yeah.
And so the son's thing was on the knife. So the twist I thought was coming, and obviously I was wrong. But I thought it was her son come back in time to get revenge for the Durases. And that's my alternate episode, was Kimtar was actually Lursa's son coming back in time to get revenge for what the Enterprise D crew does to the Duras sisters.
Wow.
Not just so far, which he's got plenty of fodder already to get revenge from the Klingon Civil War we saw, but also for the upcoming film.
My alternate episode is the Duras sisters plot line in the episode that we just hear referenced, but we don't see. And also Gowron is the dad.
It's funny enough, the Greatest Generation guys hypothesized that wouldn't it be fun if Gowron was the dad? I guess because he's one of the few other Klingons we know.
Great minds, and me.
Well, people always say great minds think alike, and I like to say so do mediocre minds.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Usually it's a diss on myself, not us.
Why haven't I ever heard that one before? You'd think that people would have like thrown that as a zinger like a long time ago.
The great minds or the mediocre minds?
The mediocre one. That's a great
I've been
little.
saying that for years.
Yeah.
Because if great minds think alike, mediocre minds also think alike.
It would follow.
That's when we get the twist. That Kimtar's Alexander. Again, that's not the twist I saw coming, but I guess that explains why he knows Kalar's final moments. I really was bummed that Alexander had such a dark future that he was ready to kill himself if he couldn't change himself.
Yeah.
And that he blamed himself for his father's death, which I guess obviously the timeline changes from here and Worf doesn't die in 20 years. I think we see enough. I think there's enough out there to know that that's not going to happen, but it's still real. And you assume at this point that both Alexander and Kimtar, well, first Kimtar will probably just Back to the Future fade out in the photo because Alexander's been changed enough that Kimtar as he is will not exist at this point. But also Alexander isn't ever going to become like super warrior. It's just that he has been changed through this experience as we see towards the end of the episode.
Right.
So Kimtar didn't achieve his goal, but he did do something. He didn't do nothing.
Right. Well, in addition to what Worf said, I mean, he actually might have changed Alexander's mind about it. It's something. It's I was going to say, I think that's the reason why we wouldn't see a follow-up for this is because they didn't think of it or they wrapped it up in just this way so there wouldn't need to be. It's that kind of like, well, something changed. And we don't have to stick to this thing that was going to happen in this whole, because that was just any number of things could have caused it at that point. So
yeah, I did like when Worf finally says, "Well, you've already changed things more than you realize, whatever."
Right.
But I guess, and this is definitely a case of, and I've talked about this reference to Star Trek or Star Wars, like, wow, why Last Jedi? I wanted to see Luke kick butt. I didn't want this version, but and then when I watched it again, I'm like, okay. I'm watching the movie they made, not the one I wanted. And in this sense, here I'm also, I think I come at it from no, I wanted Alexander to keep saying, no, I'm not doing this Klingon, not quote unquote nonsense. I'm going to blaze my own path. And I feel like that's more in keeping with his mother as well, Kalar, and honoring her memory. Not to mention Worf's Earth grandparents, who I think also are not.
Helena and Sergei Rosenko,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like, so from that perspective, I feel like I just find that more interesting. And I feel like, I feel like Alexander should be a different person down the road or different from other Klingons, because he is. But I also, it did remind me of, because, well, as you said, Jimmy, it's like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be this dark. And I was like, yeah, Alexander ends up being a loser, is what I thought in my mind, which is kind of like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the Family Guy, where Stewie goes into the future to see himself, and they're working at a Best Buy or whatever, and all this stuff. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, what happened to you that you end up being a loser? Again, that's me also projecting what I wanted to see as opposed to what they presented. Because, I mean, there's also the angle of, yeah, you know what? It makes sense that Alexander had this tough upbringing, and yeah, you know what? It doesn't turn out great for everybody, So there is an angle of, wow, these guys are keeping it real in the 24th century.
I mean, I will say the least surprise is that Alexander didn't turn out super Klingon warrior. That's not a surprise at all.
Yeah. So, and maybe he still doesn't, but, so.
I think that. I think
that would have saved his father's life. But.
I don't think that they didn't necessarily show what you wanted in some sense from what you're saying. Worf essentially said that he was going to support that choice, or that he's going to be more understanding if Alexander doesn't turn out to be something.
That's true.
And I think there's room for a middle ground at this point. We aren't seeing Alexander turn into a warrior, but we saw that even during the episode he was fairly capable. Mm-hmm. He was certainly had the ability to become one if he wanted to. And he saw the possible need for something like that as well. And so, I mean, there's a difference between learning how to defend yourself and learning how to do a lot of other things with the heritage, and not then, towing like the line of all the dogma. I mean, he can probably just learn some things and decide to do what he wants to do without going, no, I have to be all the way, all this or all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's a spectrum. Klingon warrior, Klingon not warrior.
All the way between.
I was gonna say, I think more important than Alexander's growth in this episode was Worf's growth to better accept his son. Yeah. I mean, at the end, with Worf arguing that peace is laudable, and telling Alexander, hey, we don't have to do training right now. There's time for that later. Like, accepting Alexander for who he is. I liked that a lot, and I really appreciated that aspect of this episode.
Yeah. That's, like I said, I started out with like, oh God, Klingon nonsense, but like I said, I feel like early on for sure I'd have been like, nope. But I think they've gotten better at writing for Worf and writing his stuff, so it's not just dishonorable, honorable, dishonorable nonsense.
So perhaps that was the real twist. See, by the end of this, you're like, this episode didn't hang the moon, but here's all this great stuff, and
there is, yeah, I did like it. So
there was a really lame part where Alexander asks Worf if he'll ever see Kemtar again, and he said, "Oh, yeah, but it may be a long time." That was a little bit grown for me.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
That's all the note I got. Keith?
My note is that I loved that, actually. I must have missed it, actually. I was kind of rushing for the... Anyway.
Okay.
That's it.
I will say the episode was directed by Jonathan West, who is best known as a cinematographer for 118 episodes of DS9 and 47 episodes of Next Gen. So he's mainly a cinematographer. As far as directing credits, he only has 8. This is his first directing credit, the Next Gen. He will direct 6 episodes of DS9 over 5 seasons, including a very famous episode called Trials and Tribulations. So, he'll have that. And then he directed 6 episodes of Charmed as well, and then What's Eating You, whatever that is. So, but yeah, mainly a cinematographer. So let's get to the rankings then. Who was your annoyance of this episode?
Kemtar.
Was it anybody's not Alexander? Just checking.
A young Alexander for me.
I like young Alexander. I went with old Alexander, so I'll be
Go with Chemtar.
Yeah.
Just for ease, I'm gonna go ahead and put him down as Chemtar. I went with Keith. It's Alexander. I mean, I would say I actually wrote Alexanders, so both of them.
Yeah.
And here's the thing I feel bad about is I think both of them acted completely in character for who Alexander is.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were both true to the character.
Yeah.
That character is annoying in any instance, in any variation. And it's not the actor's fault. I think both actors did a fine job.
Yeah.
So we said we would give a scale of 1 to 10 whenever there was a prevalent child actor in an episode. I know it's been a long time since we've done that. We have given Alexander a scale before.
Yeah.
I'm putting him 5 because I feel like both Alexanders all acted correctly, and yet we're still annoying just by who they are, so I put him right in the middle.
Huh.
Put them both together. I guess cumulatively I'd give them a 5.
Steve?
That seems about right. I mean,
Okay.
I think this is because of the mitigating factors. I mean, I understand, like, just
Last week.
It was similar, but right, the motivation. All right, let me start over. Knowing what the kid wanted and the situation that he was being put in, yes, that's really not that far out of line. But just the whininess of it was just like nails on a chalkboard kind of thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. So we having a drink with this week?
Did I close it? No, I didn't. Bator. I
Why?
originally had the Duroff sisters, and then since Lursa's with child.
Patreon viewers get to saw my visual reaction because I also wrote Betor because Lursa's pregnant and can't drink with me. So we're on the same page, Steven. Completely on the same page. I love the Durrell sisters so much.
I do too.
Every appearance, they're delightful in a terrible way. Like, I love to hate them, right?
Yeah.
And also, I like women that are a bit evil. My wife is definitely evil. She's got my son going around going, he, like purposely when he's doing evil things right now. So yeah, I'm for an evil woman. I'm Beator.
same for different reasons, I guess. And
what are your reasons?
And not because they're evil necessarily is what I mean, but just And I won't stop Larissa from having a drink if she wants to. I mean, it's supposed to be okay up to a point. I'm not going to be like,
probably have half a glass
like,
of blood wine without affecting the fetus.
Maybe it doesn't bother Klingons at all.
That's true. We don't know. Yeah. I'm not going to, keep buying shots or anything. But just.
Oh, I did have a couple fashion notes I forgot about. The battle robes that they wore for the reenactors were fun. They're very shiny, and they definitely did not look like warrior robes, but performance robes. I appreciated them.
To make it so, folks really enjoyed that.
I also kind of liked Alexander's pajamas. I felt like they were a slight step up. And the Duras sisters had the normal Klingon armor, but they had like translucent green sleeves that I really liked.
Yeah.
This time around.
The fashion and so people love all of those things you just cited. Yeah.
The Duras sisters have never been better dressed.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm pretty sure in the film they're not as well dressed as right now.
They also mentioned their hair, how great their hair and Kimtar's hair was. And I had the same thought watching. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look as ratty as you usually see.
Their teeth, however, as gross as ever, but purposefully so. Ranking the episode.
I'm not dating for the teeth.
I'm tempted to start against Wesley's final episode 2 weeks ago, but it also feels like this is definitely so far above it, we shouldn't start that low. So instead, let's start with Inheritance. Better or worse than Inheritance? That's the one where Data finds the former wife of Noonien Soong.
Okay.
Oh.
Because this season's all about family. Ranking the episode, better or worse than Inheritance?
I'm going to say better.
That's tough. I don't know. For me, I think we're in the right range in the sense of families and twist endings and so forth.
It's tough for me. But which is it, Keith? Better or worse? I won't weigh in. I'll let you make a non-biased.
It's too far removed. I'm going to probably better. Yeah. Okay. Well, you're right. It's more fun, I guess. There's that.
I was kind of torn, but I'm not going to argue better. So we'll go up. Above that is Gambit Part 1. I'm going to go below that.
Yeah, that's probably fine.
I might have gone above, but this might be very heavy recency bias too.
Well, Steven, if you want to keep going up above Gambit Part 1 is Gambit Part 2.
Yeah, I think I have Gambit Part 2 and Gambit Part 1 mixed in my head. So, you know what? I think we're in a good spot.
Okay, great. Next week, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The Maquis, Part 1. The destruction of a Cardassian ship leads Cisco Ducat and Cisco's old friend Cal Hudson to the fact that there's an unofficial war between the Maquis and the Cardassians, which is a bit of a spoiler based on how the episode unfolds. I don't think the term Maquis even gets brought up until the very end. But anyway, until then, live long.
In your own timeline and prosper.
What a twist.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?